Hey everybody, Ryan here at etrailer.com. Today on our 2010 Subaru Outback Wagon, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Curt T-connector vehicle wiring harness. This is going to provide us with all the necessary lighting functions to not only remain safe and legal, but to also let other motorists know what our intentions are as we're going down the road. Our wiring is going to provide us with more than enough power to work with either incandescent or even LED lighting. It's going to have 3 amps per circuit for the stop and turn and 6 amps for our taillight circuit. Now, one of the things I really like about this wiring kit is that it uses a module box. Now that's going to protect our vehicle's wiring if a short or anything like that were to happen on our trailer. Now our wiring does have a nice dust cap on the end to help keep any moisture or dirt and debris out of our terminals. And I'd also recommend some dielectric grease to put on our terminals every now and again to help prevent any corrosion. Now the cap also doubles as a hanger to hold our wiring to our hitch, or there's also brackets available that would go on your hitch and store your wiring in a more permanent position, something like this. Now that we've gone over some of the features, let's go ahead and install it together. To begin our install, we're going to need to remove our taillights, so we'll start by opening up our hatch. And here on the inside edge of our taillight, we're going to have 2 10mm bolts that we'll need to pop out. Then once those are out, we can wiggle our taillight. And if it doesn't want to come out, what you can do is take the palm of your hand and lightly tap the corner of it like that. Then behind it, we will need to disconnect one electrical connector, push down on the center of the tab, and separate it apart. I'm going to do the same thing over on the other side. Now we're going to grab our wiring harness and we're going to feed the wires down through the taillight pocket to get them to drop underneath the car. So we'll start with our 4-way. And the only other wire that we're going to feed down for now is the red and green wire. Now we can take our yellow and brown wires and use this connector to plug into our factory taillight wiring. Now we can take our big bundle of black wire and connect it to the black wire coming out of our box. Now I'm going to be using a heat shrink butt connector just for a little extra protection. However, the one in the kit that's provided will work just fine too. I'll put that over the wire, crimp it down, and do the same thing on the other wire. And to shrink our heat shrink, I'm going to be using a heat gun. Now with our wire connected, we can take the other end of it and feed it down through the taillight pocket as well. Now we're going to secure our box using the provided 2-sided sticky tape. Now it's very important that you clean off both surfaces with some rubbing alcohol and a paper towel to make sure our sticky tape works properly. Now I'm going to mount this down in the taillight pocket where it's nice and flat on that sheet metal. So first, peel off one side of our backing paper, stick it to our box, tear the other side off. We can carefully drop it down into place and stick it to the metal. Now once we have our box secured, we can ground out our white wire with the ring terminal attached to it. And we're going to ground that onto some sheet metal here in the taillight pocket. We're going to do that using the provided self-tapping screw. So now we can kind of tuck the rest of our wires down out of the way. and reconnect our tail light. We'll take the other end of our connector and plug it into our light. We'll put our tail light in place the same way that we removed it. Now over here on the passenger side, before we run our wires over and up into our tail light pocket, it's best to use a pull wire, which is just a piece of nylon tubing, but you can use a coat hanger or even a rigid piece of wiring. And drop that down through the pocket to the bottom of the car. That way when we run our wiring over here, we can connect it to this pull wire and pull it right up nice and easy. Our red and green wires with the connectors on the end of it, we're going to run that over to the passenger side where we drop down that pull wire. And our 4-pole wiring, that's going to run here close to the center of the hitch. So I'll go ahead and do that and show you the path that I took. That's a little tricky to see, but our wires came down out of that pocket over here, and I just went up in front of our hitch, kind of behind our bumper cover, and dropped my 4-way out right here. And the red and green wire continues along up through here, and our pole wire actually dropped out of this pocket, and so I taped our red and green wire to it, then pulled it up into our taillight pocket. With our connectors up through our passenger side, we can untape it from our pole wire and then connect it to our tail light. Now one of the plugs will plug into our tail light. And the other one will plug to the factory wiring. When that's done, we can reinstall it just like we took it out. I went ahead and ran our black power wire up to the front into the engine compartment. This is a path that I took. Came up and over our subframe. It's very important to avoid any moving or hot parts. And it drops down right through here. You can kind of just peel this plastic shield back. And I ran it underneath there. And up and along through here. And I brought it over to the side and ran it along the inside of our frame rail. I secured it using some clamps, which you can find here on etrailer.com. Up and over the support, zip tied it to one of the brake lines. And what I did before I started running this, I actually used a pull wire just like we did on the taillights and dropped it down through the engine compartment. That way at this point, we can take the other end of our wire, connect it to the pull wire, and then we can go into the engine compartment and pull this wire up. We're going to route this over to the positive side of our battery. So with our power wire ran over to our battery, we can now prepare our fuse holder. To do that, you want to first open up the cap and make sure the fuse is not installed. Then on one end of it, we're going to put on a butt connector. Once again, I'm using a heat shrink one, and if you'd rather use these, you can find them here at eTrailer. Crimp that down. I'm going to put on the included ring terminal. Now once that is done, we can eyeball the length that we're going to need to remove the access power wire. So we can kind of figure out how we want to run it. I think we'll go something like that. So we'll trim our power wire about here. We can strip some of that insulation back. And then connect our fuse holder to it. I use my heat gun to shrink our heat shrink. Now we can remove the nut holding down our positive battery terminal. Place our ring terminal over it and tighten the nut back down. At this point, we can put in our included fuse, close the dust cover. Now I'm just going to use a zip tie around our battery handle to make sure it doesn't bounce around. With everything hooked up, we can use a tester, or you can plug into your trailer and make sure everything is working properly. We're going to use our left turn, our right turn, our brake lights, and our running lights. And that'll do it for our look at and our installation of the Curt T-connector vehicle wiring harness on our 2010 Subaru Outback Wagon.